Hello, my name's Amanda. Welcome to my channel. This video is called You Can Make It with One Headlight. And we're going to talk about something that I love so much, a total gem for me on my road to recovery and trauma healing, called the Theory of Positive Disintegration. And some of you guys know that I am really passionate about trauma healing. I'm a trauma-informed coach. I had a difficult early childhood where I was quite neurotic and I could see spiritual beings in other dimensions, and I just had a difficult childhood in that way. But later in life, I had a pretty bad assault where I was locked in a hotel room, and I was in a violent situation for about 6 hours on and off, and hit many times on the head with a piece of metal. So after that incident, a lot of my early childhood frights and neuroses and a lot of that stuff came back. I was actually already on a healing journey and I was already processing early childhood stuff, but this was kind of like a tipping point for me. It was difficult because I had a minor brain injury and I could no longer trust my brain to work the way that it used to. Like I couldn't remember small things like missing a job interview, or I wasn't sure if what I was saying was appropriate. I would leave situations and be like, did what I say, was it even appropriate to the situation? Like losing, and that was a minor brain injury. So I just want to say a big shout out to anybody whose trauma healing journey involves a head injury, because that is a whole kettle of fish on its own. The healing of trauma can be so varied. So I think a lot of people can relate to this theory if you're on a healing path, whether it's PTSD healing, if you've got, say, a diagnosis like generalized anxiety disorder, if you've had a series of panic attacks in your life, if you have ADHD, overexcitability, or neurosis, like not even diagnosed by the medical community, if your nervous system is easily activated, then this video is for you and this theory is for you. So yeah, I'm not an academic. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm just a coach and somebody who is on my own journey. So I just wanted to share this. And basically, the theory is, unlike general psychology, I'm just going to look at my notes for a sec here. Yeah, unlike mainstream psychology, psychological tension and overexcitability and even anxiety and other emotionally painful symptoms, they are seen as necessary for personal growth. And without going through these things and seeing life through a new perspective, even if it seems negative, we might never break through barriers of being rigid and stereotypical and, quite frankly, just 100% bought into the matrix. So in this theory, Dabrowski talks about 5 levels. And so number 1 is somebody who is, say, rigid, stereotypical, just kind of what you see is what you get, and not necessarily empathetic, not a bad person per se, but just not really aware of other people's feelings being as big as their own. Okay, second level of development, there is serious mental disturbances. There is the loosening of the small ego, or like the character structure, where the person is no longer identifying with a character or a role. They sense that they're more than just a man, more than a woman, more than a Canadian, more than a nurse, that these are just temporary, they're just temporary parts of the small ego that give us definition and uniqueness in our society and as a human being on earth. But there's a loosening where there's a sense that there's more going on beneath all of that stuff. And the mental disturbances could be great or small. Some people have like big psychotic breaks at this level, need to be hospitalized, need to be on medicines. It can be quite frightening, especially in Western society where this is really pathologized, where it's really judged. where you're often ostracized for having this loosening of the small ego, especially if it's sudden and chaotic. So yeah, this can be really difficult in the West depending on how you're supported. Number 3, and this is when we start to get into a little bit more of the magic. This is somebody who's on their healing journey, who has kind of gotten out of the deepest depths of that earlier stage, where you start to notice that you're a multifaceted being. You start to notice that that you've got parts of you all over the place. And this is a good thing. There is an inner conflict now for that character, because the character that you used to play that was like, the female nurse that lives in Canada and that's all there is to you. Now you're seeing that there are more parts. There are more parts to you. They're starting to be really noticeable and maybe irritating or embarrassing or beautiful and fun. So that can be really overwhelming at this point. There's a growing sense of what ought to be in community and society versus what still is. So you're seeing how things could be in the future in the best possible scenario. And you're also seeing how things are, and that can be extremely disturbing, and that can get you extremely down. And at this point, there's a lot of people in society right now, I think, and I don't know if you guys have heard the term the black pill, the black pill, where you go way, way down the conspiracy theory bandwagon, even if some of those conspiracy theories are true or get proven to be true in the future, but you lose all hope and you just see everything as dark. And you think that there is a negative ulterior motive behind absolutely everything. It can create paranoia. It can create separate, like being unnecessarily separate from other people, not having the ability to find common ground. So that's where we see the black pill community. What else? Yeah, your actions are guided by your values and your ideals. So even if you haven't fully become someone who is constantly working through and embodying your highest value, you're doing your best, and you're noticing that you feel better the times that you do embody those values when you're speaking and making decisions. So it's starting to come into reality, this positive disintegration. Level 4 is like a constant shaping of your behavior consciously all the time. It's much more rare for you to be impulsive, say or do things that you really regret. I mean, we all will have that part of us, but it's a lot more rare. So you're not as stressed out about actions that you took yesterday or something that you said in a meeting. You have more of a growth of empathy for other people. So you're feeling your own feelings and noticing the subtleties and the discomfort of those feelings more than ever, which is really hard. But at the same time, that's giving you insight into how other people around you might be feeling. So if you see somebody behaving in the room a little bit unusual, you might recognize yourself in that, because you might think and notice, wow, I behaved like that on this occasion, and the reason I did that is because I was feeling this horrible feeling. So now I see someone in the room doing that thing again. I am having empathy and understanding that they're probably feeling something similar in order to act like that. So you start to, even if you're not feeling everyone else's feelings fully in your body, you're having that empathy and understanding because you're starting to recognize all that you've been through. You start to have more autonomy in your decisions. So when you used to make decisions based on trends, based on social media, based on community and religious expectations or family expectations around you, those are no longer your only influences. First and foremost comes your own autonomy. What is going to be healthiest for me in the long term? And if that fits into the values around me, great. If it doesn't, I'm sticking with what is healthiest for me in the long term. And that is the point where we start to have a lot of conflict, even if it's just inner conflict. Some of us have outer conflict too with the world around us, because the world that we've been in the lower levels, where we're a little bit more of a hive mind, a little bit more tribal. We kind of like all do things the same way because we've always done them the same way. And that's been society's expectations for a long time. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to offend anyone. We don't want to trigger other people and have confrontations. But now this rising sense of self is coming up at this level, and you can't help but doing what is best for you, not in a selfish way, but in a way that makes you feel like you're sticking with your values and you're keeping yourself as healthy as possible and that you have no regrets. And that is generally going to come into some kind of conflict with the world around you, or even if it's not outright, you feel it on the inside. Like you're with the same people you know and love and have for many years, but now you see and sense that there's a part of you that's an outsider from them because you're now doing things that go against the grain, having opinions that go against the grain. And so there's a lot of discomfort, and this can go on for a long time. So this is not for the weary. This is for people who are playing the long game with their one headlight. And level 5, Dabrowski calls this secondary integration. And this is like an ongoing sense of empathy, an ongoing focus of self-perfection. And I don't think he means we never make a mistake, but that we're always perfecting or bringing another layer of finesse, exquisiteness, beauty, creativity, refinement to what we're doing compared to last time. Like, how could I make this better? And in doing so, feel better all around as a person, but create an environment that's better for everyone. There's more of a oneness or an all vision. What's best for me that is also best for everybody else around? How can I create that with my words and actions? And so there's thought and inspiration and awareness that goes into decisions in a way that used to not matter. It used to not matter to you. At the level 5, there's more of a responsibility. So you start to sense that your own gifts, your own talents, things you're inspired to say or do or write or create, problems you're inspired to solve, you have a sense of responsibility about those things. Whereas before you could take or leave engaging in those things. Maybe you're more focused on making money or being liked or having a great social life. But now there's a rising sense of responsibility for carrying those things in the world whenever possible. You have a sense of responsibility for your environment. You're not responsible for other people's happiness or their behavior or for doing the work for them, but you're responsible for creating the best version of you and the best version of your environment to give other people inspiration and uplift them should they be also looking up. Depending on your genetics, depending on your upbringing, and probably plenty of, spiritual, emotional, different contributions, a person is going to not necessarily move through all of those stages. They might start at 1 and end at 3. They might start at 2 and end at 5. It doesn't really matter. There are so many factors. But just knowing that these exist, being curious about where you've been at in the past and where you are now. And then most of us are not at a 5, at least not consistently. So it gives us an ideal. It gives us something to work towards and know is possible. And part of this too is the development of your own personality. And this is not about being egocentric. It's not about being selfish. It's about having and taking the responsibility for expressing and embodying the highest version of your God self in this world. And what that looks like physically with the things that you're doing or saying, with what you are expressing, how you are approaching situations, or which opportunities you're taking advantage of, or what spontaneous wisdom is coming out of your mouth, or spontaneous encouragement. And so, what do you love? What do you not love so much? Knowing yourself. That's why we talk about know thyself so often. Knowing what you're attached to, knowing what attachments you've let go of, All of these things are the development of an individual personality, or the I, or the exalted ego. And so part of our path on earth is to come here and separate, not in an aggressive way, not in a conflicting way necessarily, from the tribe, from the hive mind, but separate as an individual, a unique person, express that, but still have the same love and affinity as human to human. You know, the same or better than you used to be. And so it's a very difficult path to walk when we are going through what Carl Jung called individuation, because we're going with our new values and our new ideals, and it feels more separate sometimes from the people around us than ever. And yet we might now care about people and the community more than ever. But we also care about the unique path we are on when it comes to developing our personality and expressing it. And so a lot of people find themselves at this point where it's hard to know what is the right thing to do. If you're an empath, if you are somebody who has grown up with narcissistic parenting or abusive parenting, this is even more difficult, because in the past, growing up, if you've been rocking the boat or doing things the way that you were inspired to do, that might not have been welcome. That might have caused trauma. That might have caused ridicule. That might have caused aggressive discipline, the pressure from your authority figures to conform. And so that in itself it's kind of traumatic just to be yourself if you find yourself in that category. And so this is like really a lot of work for some people to develop their own personality. But it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it, because when that personality that is unique to you, the values, the interests, the creativity that is unique to you starts to get expressed over and over on a regular basis, you find out who your people are, you find out who you people aren't. You might get ignored completely, but it does get better if you don't give up, if you keep sticking at it, because this is what you came here, one of the things you came here to do was to develop that I, not that big ego I, that individuality and that personality, so that your nature, with the inspiration of God's source, could be expressed here in a way that nobody else can, ever has, or ever will. So most people are not going to be interested in going through these stages or even notice that they exist, and that is fine. The regular people are governed by peer pressure. They exhibit what Nietzsche called a hard personality. So it's not malleable, it's not developing, it's just like stays the same as what it was formed as from the parents and the community. They adhere strictly to social conventions, and they don't rock the boat. And some of them aggressively try and enforce rules or regulations or ways of being that are not even helpful, but they've always been done that way. And so a lot of people are going to stay in that, and we should never have an expectation of someone to part from that, because that just might not be part of their path. And in fact, a lot of traumatized people, a lot of people who do have anxiety, a lot of people who do have some of those things like PTSD, neurosis, they never leave that. So they still have these difficult symptoms that we're talking about, but they stay in that rigid mindset. They stay in the hard personality. They don't have the capacity in this life to break free of that and go on this healing journey, to go down into the mental disturbance, to go down into the loosening of the small ego and loosening of the character structures. It's too frightening for them. And there's no judgment on that. The only thing that can change that is just time. Maybe several incarnations on earth, time, just peeling away little layer of the rigid self, little layer of the fear by time and experience, until they are ripe to go through this. We just don't know. I'm even speculating saying that's my sense, but we just don't know why some people who are traumatized and who have anxiety don't go through a trauma healing process. So Dabrowski said that the number one indicator, the number one sign of a person going through this challenging trauma healing positive disintegration journey is overexcitability. And we can think of overexcitability as being highly sensitive. As, like the lights are a bit bright, sounds are louder for you. Your feelings are seemingly bigger than the people around you. And sometimes that can be hard to be in this world as a highly sensitive person, as a person whose nervous system gets activated very easily. But without that, we cannot go on this journey. Besides overexcitability and high sensitivity as being kind of like the number one reason this can happen, this process, number two would be a drive towards individual autonomy and personality development. So we all know the person who is highly sensitive or overexcitable or neurotic who does not go on this journey. So if you are that neurotic person, but you also have the motivation for developing your personality, for individuation, for seeing your unique self no matter what, and are on this path, those two things together are going to get you where you need to go. At the lower levels, when a person is still very attached to the small ego driving decision making, being in the driver's seat, a lot of times there is a big desire to make a lot of money or to climb the ladder. There is a lot of desire for admiration and attention and fame. We all have these things in us. We're just human. But in the lower levels, that is really what guides everything. That's what it's all about. There's no value or interest in developing the self and the personality and individuating. So all decisions are just based on what happens on the outside and how that can serve yourself. In the higher levels, decisions are made based on empathy, the good of everyone, solving a problem for a group, inspiring a group by something that you create or something that you beautify. So we go from, it's got to be about me, I've got to survive, and it's just about me, to, I'm making decisions that are best for me, but that also are going to support the whole group. They are not going to hurt the group and elevate me. They might elevate me, they might not, but I'm going to be healthy in the process, and I'm going to serve, and I'm doing my best to take responsibility for my environment for the future generations too. Dabrowski also talked about when we are ill at ease, when we are disturbed, then without that, there is little stimulus and momentum for growth. So if we're feeling great all the time, and I'm an advocate for balance, I'm definitely an advocate for the middle path. But if you are somebody who is highly sensitive, overexcitable, neurotic, you know that the middle path is a constant challenge. So without that neurosis, there is not going to be that stimulus for growth. And that is the truth that we need to remind ourselves of. That was the gem of information that I had to carry as my North Star, especially at the beginning of PTSD healing and understanding. Because without that, without seeing a reason for this pain, without seeing a reason for all of this discomfort and being ill at ease, it can be really dreary. There can be a lot of despair, especially when your symptoms are out of control, when you're flaring up and you feel like you just want to hide under the covers for a week, when your body it just will not relax no matter what you're doing, and you're feeling neurotic or even paranoid. So we have to keep going back. Once you sit with yourself and learn more and more over time to sit with these difficult feelings, Dr. Orion Taraban, you gotta love him or not, or Anyways, he's interesting. He talked about difficulty, suffering being like a horse in the rain. They just stand there in the rain, and there's nothing that they can do but wait for the rain to pass. And so we're developing that ability to be able to stand, to not suppress, repress, and numb feelings, but stand with the feeling because it is temporary, like the rain is temporary. And eventually it's going to be over. And we get better and better at it over time, to the point where someone could look at you from the outside and you're just going about your day. You look calm, but you're literally processing some very difficult emotions. You're feeling everything, but you're still just walking down the street just like it's another day. Whereas, 5 years ago, there's no way you could do that. And so that's what you're doing. And it's not just about surviving it. It's not just about surviving it and getting through it. It's about it being a stimulus for growth. If you are a creative, and you are also highly sensitive, you can probably think of all the times where something very creative came out of you after a big wave of symptoms. And so on more of a spiritual perspective, there can be a lot of energy running through the nervous system, a lot of spiritual energy running through the nervous system. And the traumas that we're healing from can be blocks in our energy body, and they can cause physical symptoms, physical reactions. And so looking at it from that perspective, wow, like, even though I've got a flare up, there's a lot of energy running through my body. So if I can calm myself while that energy runs through my body and hits all of these blocks, well, then I'm going to really develop as a person. I'm going to really allow this spiritual energy to run through my system. I'm going to get used to that. I'm going to welcome more of it because, in a few years from now, if I can get used to this spiritual energy running, the spiritual energy will keep running. I'll keep practicing, my yoga and my meditation and my prayer and whatever else that you do. And then at some point, those blocks are not going to be there. They're not going to be as painful. We might have scars, we might have bruises, but they're not going to be as painful. And then we can keep developing the movement and the running of that spiritual energy. And none of it would have been possible without these traumas, without these neuroses. And just a couple other gems that Dabrowski had to say about his own theory. The lower animal instincts, they must be developed into higher instincts, higher forces. So we're not repressing our desires. We're not pretending they're not there and pushing them away. We're taking their spark and we're transforming them into service and creation and problem solving. And so that is another way of describing alchemy in the body. He also said that our lower animal instincts, the forces of our peers, socialization, and society's expectations, they are inferior to the developing personality. They are inferior to your individuation and your more individuated self. So we're not going back to that after trauma. A lot of people want to get back to who they were before this big traumatic event happened. They might need to, I know, I relate to this, spend time grieving the loss of what could have been. If this never happened to me, who could I have become? What great thing could I have done? But now I've got this so-called flaw with my neurosis and my overexcitability and my high sensitivity, and making an excuse. But it's like, no, I was never meant to do those things anyway. Neither were you. What you were meant to do was heal and become something like very different from what society expects of you and what your small ego would have you do. And a new type of perception involves multi-levelness, a view of yourself that allows you to choose the highest resolution. And this might not be the most popular. It might not get you to be the most famous or beautiful or successful according to this world's standards. But that's not what you really care about at the end of this anyway. Those are things people care about as priorities at the lower levels. They're not bad. They're just not number one for you. Your perception as a multifaceted, multi-level person becomes way more important because your experiences of it are way more fulfilling. I mean, how many of you guys can relate to that, where if you've been on this journey for a while, you make a big chunk of money or you have success in this area, that's great at the time. But then you move through these layers of the self and you find that there's a lot of magic. You find that there's a lot of transformation. You find that you're getting connected with people and opportunities you never could have dreamed of or tried to work towards. These are just coming from the universe because of your vibration. So once you start experiencing those things, going back to, I'm going to be the most famous, I'm going to be the most financially successful, I'm going to be the most beautiful, those things don't have anything to them anymore. Like they used to, but they're not alluring in any way because they come and they go, whatever. They're like the icing on the cake, but we're after the real cake now, once we've kind of like dipped our foot into the benefits that come from healing trauma. I think that's all for this video. Again, this was just like a very quick overview of the theory. But what really matters and what has, again, been a gem for me over the years is knowing that there is a reason and a potential and a possibility in the healing of our trauma to become a different person, experience different things than we ever could have before in that healing process. So even if the bruises still hurt, even if the scars are still tender, maybe they will be for the next 30 years, even if you still get triggered by things that you would love to say that never trigger you anymore. Who cares? That's just part of it, You go on an amazing drive through the jungle in the Jeep and you expect that you're not going to pick up mosquitoes on your windshield. It's about the drive through the jungle and what you discover there. It's not about how dirty the car gets. So just focus on those things because it can get kind of weary on the healing journey when it comes to these things. So yeah, thank you for your support of this channel. Thank you for liking and commenting, and journey well.